Hello, how you guys doing? What's going on, girl? Get in here and close the door. They are saying that Kandi daughter is speaking out. I knew she never liked Todd. I mean, the mother never liked Todd. The daughter never liked Todd. And let's not forget, Todd's daughter didn't even like Kandi's daughter, honey. It was a whole bunch of drama and shade, but they was keeping it close and shut down for the public, honey. Now things it's coming apart because they're getting divorced. So I'm hearing Kandi's daughter, she's gossiping behind the scenes. You guys know Kandi daughter, she want to be famous too. And she's out here, and honey, you guys have to listen to this video because I just can't believe what's going on. I don't know if this video is wholly true. Everything is alleged. You know, I don't want to get sued, you guys. But everything is alleged. But I want you guys to watch this video because you guys know you guys love to react with me, right? Right. All right. So I love you guys. Make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe. And let's watch. Okay? Check this out.
We keep talking about, Lord forbid, if something happened to the both of us, but what if something happened to one of us and then the other one is still here?
See, and that's where we differ because...
That's where we differ.
You look at me like, you're going to be...
For years, the public believed one simple story. That Kandi Burruss and Todd Tucker just grew apart. Two successful people, different paths, a clean, quiet ending. But that story was never real. Because while fans were watching highlight reels, there was a silent war happening inside that house. And tonight, the silence is over. Riley Burruss has finally done what nobody expected. She didn't speak like a daughter protecting a parent. She didn't perform for cameras. She didn't soften the truth. She exposed it. Not as gossip, not as drama, but as damage. According to Riley, this divorce wasn't about money. It wasn't about fame. It wasn't even about love. It was about control. Two adults living in one home, but raising children like enemies on opposite sides. One teaching comfort, the other teaching survival. One building legacy, the other building walls. And the children? They were trapped in the middle of a family that looked perfect from the outside, but was falling apart in silence. Riley now says what millions never heard before. That Todd wasn't just distant. He was strategic. That discipline wasn't guidance. It was pressure. That life lessons felt less like teaching, and more like emotional punishment. And that inside that house, favoritism replaced fairness. Cold decisions replaced affection, and love slowly became leverage. This isn't just a story about a marriage ending. It's about a family collapsing without warning, about sisters becoming rivals, about loyalty becoming currency, and about a child who finally decided she would not carry the secret anymore. Because when a daughter breaks her silence, she doesn't just tell a story, she ends one. And what Riley Burruss just revealed might be the most devastating chapter in the Burruss Tucker legacy yet.
You ain't gonna give them nothing. I'm like, that's not true.
That's what you give off.
Yeah, it's definitely different. And not even that, but I think you guys treat your kids' lifestyles very different.
Look at this view.
16, got a high-rise apartment in the city.
Kayla said she's going to New York.
Wait, what?
Only thing I did tell her, at least if you are gonna go, you should work, stack some money.
For more than a decade, the Burruss Tucker marriage was sold as untouchable, a brand, a power couple, a success story no one was allowed to doubt. From the outside, it looked flawless. From the inside, according to Riley Burruss, it was already breaking. She says the family didn't collapse loudly. It fractured quietly. And when Riley finally spoke, she didn't sound bitter. She sounded finished. According to people close to the situation, Riley didn't decide to talk out of anger. She decided to talk out of exhaustion. Because for years, she claims, what looked like structure was actually control. What looked like discipline felt like punishment. And what looked like leadership inside that house slowly turned into power. The narrative the public believed was simple. Two strong adults, two busy schedules, one inevitable ending. But Riley now says the real story was never about schedules. It was about survival. She claims Todd Tucker wasn't emotionally absent by accident. He was emotionally calculated. Not violent. Not explosive. Just cold. According to Riley, Todd didn't disappear from the family. He reorganized it. She alleges that affection in the home wasn't missing, it was rationed. Given selectively. Withdrawn strategically. And whether intentional or not, she says the result was the same. Division. She claims every disagreement became a lesson. Every emotion became drama. Every boundary became attitude. And the children? They were measured more than they were protected. Riley alleges Todd did not lead like a father. He managed like a CEO. Love had conditions. Support came with expectations. Compliments were replaced by critiques. And what hurt Riley more than anything, according to her, wasn't that she was criticized. It's that she was categorized. She's spoiled. She's soft. She wouldn't survive without her mother. Those words, Riley claims, followed her everywhere. At dinners. In conversations she wasn't invited into. In decisions already made without her. And while she faced labels, she claims Kayla faced pressures. Kayla had rules. Riley had walls. And inside that dynamic, a rivalry grew. Not because of jealousy, but because of survival. Two daughters trying to exist under two different standards. Riley claims Kayla believed Riley was favored by Kandi. Riley says she believed Kayla was protected by Todd. And once those beliefs hardened, so did the silence. Family dinners became battlegrounds without weaponry. Holidays became performances. Trips turned transactional. Smiles were automatic. Trust wasn't. And then came the moment Riley says changed everything. The gift. The car. What the internet saw as generous. Riley now says detonated something that had been buried for years. According to Riley, the Porsche wasn't a present. It was perceived as proof. Proof that worth inside that house came from one source. And one source only. She claims that night, the house did not react like a home. It reacted like a courtroom. Accusations. Tone shifts. Silence that wasn't peaceful, it was political. And according to her, the words that followed didn't echo. They carved. This is why your daughter is impossible. Riley says that sentence did not bounce off walls. It settled inside her. And when Kayla allegedly followed online with, stepkids never become real family. Something broke forever. From that moment, Riley claims the family wasn't a family. It was a structure waiting to collapse. Not openly, not loudly, but inevitably. And according to Riley, collapse didn't come as chaos. It came as distance. At this point in the story, Riley says what happened next surprised even her. The home didn't explode. It drained. Todd didn't walk out dramatically. He faded. According to Riley, by mid-2025, Todd was no longer living in one place. He was managing two worlds. New York, Atlanta, text shortened, calls delayed, presence replaced with excuses. And then, Riley says quietly, Kandi removed Todd's surname from her life online. Not announced. Not explained. Just erased. According to insiders, that wasn't branding. That was preparation. Because by then, this wasn't about staying together. It was about surviving what staying had become. And Riley claims the final blow didn't come from divorce papers. It came from departure. She alleges Todd didn't leave Kandi. He left the household. And when Kandi tried to stop him, she says his response wasn't emotional. It was final. I'm done pretending. That's when Riley says something inside her mother shifted. Not rage. Release. But according to Riley, what came next shocked the family more than the separation itself. Celebration. Riley claims Kayla didn't mourn the breakup. She marked it. A party. Smiles. Videos. And a message that, according to Riley, no one in the family was supposed to see. Finally, he's free. Riley says she read it. And something inside her went numb. Because suddenly, everything clicked. This wasn't just conflict. It was positioning. This wasn't just tension. It was strategy. And according to Riley, it wasn't new. It was inherited.
Personally, I'd be in a bit of a situation.
No, that's not.
Yes, I would.
You would not. That's not true.
I would be.
I don't think you would agree to give her the apartments and stuff that I would agree
That's
to.
not true. That's not true.
How much I spend? Like, I don't think you would allow me to be part of the decision as much as I am with my mom.
You think you would say, yeah, well,
The difference in parenting wasn't small. It was structural. One model was comfort. The other was character. And Riley says the house could never decide which one it wanted to be. According to her, Todd viewed outcomes. Kandi viewed impact. Todd tracked results. Kandi tracked resilience. The clash wasn't personal. It was philosophical.
this is the budget, so you got to figure out how to make it work.
Yeah.
That's not true.
Do you think he would do that?
Well,
Daddy,
You think? So you
we
think?
all think that.
Time
Not
out.
just
No, my dream is to teach you to be self-sufficient. And you know what? Time out. Can I say what I'm saying?
Go ahead.
For you to be independent. If you get my money, it's a bonus.
life lesson.
I didn't want to raise children who depended on money. I wanted to raise children who could survive without it. Todd thought like a businessman. I thought like a mother. That difference didn't soften with time. It separated us. And Riley says somewhere inside that ideological war, empathy was misplaced. Decisions were debated, but feelings were dismissed. She claims that Kayla became guarded. She became isolated. And instead of uniting, they were quietly set against each other. Not with words, with positioning. Riley claims Kayla's influence over Todd grew, and her own voice faded. Text messages replaced conversations. Assumptions replaced communication. And slowly, every disagreement became allegiance-based. You weren't just disagreeing. You were choosing sides. And once sides existed, there was no family left. Only lines.
Parents are not here to teach you.
And that's the perfect word. You always want to teach a lesson. Everything is like, oh, she needs to learn a lesson.
And plus, you have a mom instinct. He thinks business-wise all the time. It's never daddy in business. It's business most of the time.
Am I going to have a tipping allowance?
In the summers, but you don't know how to show affection.
I'm trying to make it tough.
Sometimes it felt like we were living in the same house, but in two different realities. And the divorce didn't happen overnight. It was forming quietly inside us long before it ever reached paper. According to Riley, by the time the divorce became public, emotionally, it was already ancient. People were just catching up to what the house already knew. And as the marriage cracked, so did the businesses. Riley now alleges the empire wasn't immune. Old Lady Gang, Blaze Steak, Tucker Productions, the trucking ventures. According to her, the machine began slowing, not collapsing, but coughing. Deals paused, conversations cooled, energy drained, and then came whispers of paperwork. The prenup. According to Riley, that document didn't just divide wealth. It revealed intention. She claims Todd's position was limited, and Kandi's protection was precise. To fans, one question echoed louder than the rest. Was this marriage a partnership? Or a contract with an expiration date? And if the answer terrified Todd, was walking away easier than staying powerless? Riley doesn't say that, but the implication sits in the silence. And silence, she says, has always been the loudest thing in that house. And as the public tried to make sense of the fallout, something else quietly changed. Not on camera, not in interviews, not in headlines, in energy. According to people close to the family, the mood inside the Burruss, Tucker world became unfamiliar almost immediately. Phones stopped ringing. Texts went unanswered. Conversations that once lasted hours were now reduced to a single sentence. And according to Riley, something that had always been background noise finally became loud. Silence. She claims that after Todd stepped away from the house, the illusion didn't shatter. It evaporated. And once the illusion was gone, no one knew how to stand inside the truth. Riley alleges that what hurt most was not the departure. It was what followed. No apology tour. No emotional reckoning. No, let's fix this. Instead, she says she witnessed people choosing sides without saying which side they were on. Support became selective. Information became currency. And trust became optional. Riley claims she realized something unsettling. That some people around the family were not reacting like a marriage had ended. They were reacting like a transaction had failed. According to her, discussions that once revolved around emotions and repair slowly shifted into territory that sounded colder. Assets. Divisions. Future positioning. And in that moment, Riley says it dawned on her. This was no longer personal. It was procedural. Around this time, online watchers began noticing subtle changes too. No official statements. No public response. But small things. A shared photo disappearing. A name missing. A birthday posted, without the person who once stood next to it. And then came the rumors. Not about love, but about leverage. Fans began circulating theories that this divorce would not be fought emotionally, but strategically. The more quiet the family became, the louder speculations grew. And Riley did nothing to stop them. According to people close to her, she wasn't encouraging chaos. She was exhausted by correction. For years, she says, she had watched the family narrative be edited, softened, cleaned, packaged. And now she claims she no longer cared to adjust public perception. If people were going to talk, they might as well talk honestly. Because according to Riley, the peace everyone believed existed inside that house was never peace. It was compliance. She alleges that emotional labor in that home was expected, but emotional reward was not guaranteed. And when that pattern finally collapsed, everything attached to it collapsed too. Friendships, partnerships, business confidence. She suggests that people around Todd began behaving differently. Less warmth, more calculation. And that was the first time she realized the family had not just been affected, it had been assessed. According to online analysts, shortly after the separation became public, business activity linked to the Tucker name showed visible shifts. Some projects slowed, some conversations stalled, others simply disappeared from radar. Fans questioned whether coincidence was at play, or consequence. And Riley didn't deny either. She merely said, "Watch who stays quiet. They're the ones with the most to lose." That line circulated heavily. And then came the detail that triggered something deeper. Riley allegedly hinted that some conversations between Todd and outside parties had been happening long before the household broke. Not through public channels. Not with transparency. But quietly. Strategically. She never named names. But she allowed the implication to exist. And implication is where the internet thrives. Soon enough, speculation turned darker. Not about affairs. Not about scandals. But about narrative control. Online watchers started piecing timelines together. Who stopped appearing when? Who started appearing more often? Who seemed suddenly confident? And who looked carefully absent? There was no single accusation. Just an uncomfortable realization. This divorce wasn't unfolding randomly. It was unfolding deliberately. And Riley's silence in the middle of it all? People misread it. They thought she was protecting peace. She says she was protecting truth. Because according to her, what had already happened was heavier than anything people were guessing. And then she said something that changed tone entirely. She suggested that at one point, her mother was pressured to remove someone from the household. Not publicly. Not dramatically. Privately. The implication wasn't about control of space. It was about control of influence. Riley never stated it outright. She didn't have to. The emotional damage in her voice did the work for her. If true, this wasn't a family dispute. It was power redistributed through pressure. And Riley insists the effects still remain. She claims some wounds don't bleed. They echo. And one of the strongest echoes, according to her, came from watching two daughters stand on opposite sides, while the adults responsible stood safely apart. By now, the internet was no longer just watching. It was dissecting. Podcasts broke down every line Riley had spoken. Fans found clips from years ago that suddenly looked different. Body language once dismissed now appeared weighted. Jokes were reclassified as warnings. And interviews that once felt lighthearted now looked layered. The public didn't ask if Riley was emotional. They asked if she was revealing. And that question shifted the narrative completely. According to social reactions, many fans were no longer trying to decide who was wrong. They wanted to know something far more unsettling. Who benefited? Because where chaos is random, no one wins. But when chaos is architectural, somebody always does. And quietly, another theory started forming. That this divorce was not the beginning of an ending. It was the middle of an exit strategy. Not emotional. Operational. Riley never confirmed this. She didn't have to. The breadcrumbs she dropped were heavy enough. She said, "There are people smiling right now who were never neutral." And once that sentence landed, everything after it felt colder. The internet didn't ask who had left the marriage. They asked who had escaped it. By this point, public perception had split cleanly. Some believed Riley was emotional. Others believed she was late. Late to a truth that had been waiting for years. And the most dangerous part? She wasn't asking for sympathy. She wasn't crying for the camera. She wasn't begging to be believed. She was documenting. And documentation is not for comfort. It's for record. And as more fans revisited old footage, a new pattern emerged. Whenever Todd spoke publicly toward the end, it wasn't with warmth. It was with detachment. With corporate calm. With a voice trained not to flinch. Which brought the audience back to the same question. Was this marriage falling apart? Or had it been quietly dismantled? Because collapse feels violent. This felt measured. And Riley, for the first time, allowed herself to say the part no one else would. We weren't breaking down. We were being phased out. That line didn't trend. It unsettled. Because when something breaks, it can be repaired. But when something is phased out, it's replaced. And that leaves one final thought hanging in the air. If this wasn't disorder, then whose order was it? And by the time the internet realized something irreversible had happened, the story had already evolved into something darker than a divorce. It had become a reckoning. Because at this stage, no one was asking if the marriage had failed. They were asking whether it had ever truly existed. According to those watching closely, the aftermath did not look like heartbreak. It looked like repositioning. Statements were cautious. Silence was strategic. And the people who once appeared inseparable now resembled strangers carefully orbiting a shared past they refused to touch. Riley's words didn't calm the storm. They sharpened it. Not because she accused, but because she remembered. And memory, when spoken aloud, has a strange power. It pulls threads people forgot existed. Old interviews resurfaced. Body language was reanalyzed. Moments once considered harmless now looked misaligned. The internet did what it always does when it senses deception. It zoomed in, frame by frame. People replayed jokes that no longer sounded funny. Comments that once felt casual were now reclassified as warnings. Even smiles were examined like evidence. And in the middle of that audit, a question kept reappearing. Was Todd walking away? Or was he being forced out by something no one was allowed to discuss? Riley never named a villain. She didn't need one. The vacuum did the job for her. Because absence has weight. And Todd's absence wasn't emotional alone. It was logistical, physical, measurable. According to online tracking, he didn't just disappear from family life. He disappeared from familiar spaces. Places he once frequented no longer welcomed him. Inner circles subtly tightened. Conversations quietly shifted. And to many observers, it looked less like escape and more like exile. No accusations were made publicly. No papers were presented. But fans noticed something else. Distance. And distance is rarely random. At this stage, the narrative wasn't being driven by interviews anymore. It was being driven by pattern recognition. Who stopped showing up? Who moved forward untouched? Who remained silent? And who suddenly had everything to say? Riley, meanwhile, stopped explaining. Her tone changed. Not angrier, calmer. And when people calm down after years of being quiet, it's rarely because the situation improved. It's because they accepted what it cost. She didn't beg for sympathy. She didn't ask to be believed. She stopped persuading altogether. And instead, she started documenting. Every interview from that point forward felt less like emotion and more like closure. Final, precise, unnegotiable. Because according to Riley, some endings do not crush. They solidify. And when something hardens, it doesn't collapse again. It stays broken. Meanwhile, conversation around the businesses intensified. Not with facts, with fear. Fans began speculating whether the brands once built as symbols of unity were now liabilities. Whether partnerships would survive silence. Whether loyalty could exist without access. And Riley never confirmed any of it. She simply said, "You'll know what mattered, by what still stands." That line traveled fast. Because it didn't promise answers. It promised outcomes. And outcomes are louder than accusations. By now, the public wasn't wondering who caused the divorce. They were wondering who survived it. Who adapted. Who advanced. And who vanished. Riley's truth didn't point fingers. It drew maps. Maps of silence. Maps of disappearance. Maps of behavior. And the public followed them through old footage. Old tweets. Old bookings. Old friendships. The more the timeline aligned, the less comfortable it became. Because patterns don't lie. They repeat. Some viewers began suggesting this divorce functioned less like a breakup. And more like a removal. Not of a husband. But of influence. Of position. Of access. Riley never said the word power. But everything she described circled it. And that frightened people. Because it suggested something deeper than heartbreak was at play. It suggested reengineering. Not of love, but of leverage. Near the end of one of her final comments, Riley dropped a sentence so quietly. Most people missed it. One day, I'll tell the part I'm not ready to say yet. That statement changed everything. Not because of what it revealed, but because of what it delayed. The public realized they were watching a story stop early, not end. Because when someone pauses a confession mid-sentence, it's rarely because they ran out of truth. It's because they ran into consequence. From that moment on, every future silence became heavier. Riley wasn't quoted the same. Not dismissed. Not doubted. Delayed. Like someone whose words had weight. But not permission. And in the background of all this, life continued. Quietly. Unapologetically. Weddings happened. Business moved forward. Photos were posted. Smiles were staged. But the feeling remained. Something unresolved hovered. Not in headlines. In absence. And the scariest part? Nothing publicly exploded. No lawsuits. No breakdowns. No viral confessionals. Just quiet separation. And the eerie stability that follows something that was never repaired. Which led fans to the final, unsettling thought. Sometimes closure doesn't arrive as honesty. It arrives as distance. And in that distance, stories aren't denied. They're buried. Riley didn't expose a monster. She exposed a mechanism. One that doesn't scream. It reorganizes. And the deeper the audience went, the clearer it became. This story was never about a marriage failing. It was about a system finishing. And when systems finish, they don't collapse loudly. They disappear cleanly, leaving only one question behind. If this wasn't chaos, then whose design was it? The truth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes, it dissolves. And what Riley Burruss left behind in her words wasn't an ending. It was a warning. Because if this story has taught us anything, it's that families don't always collapse from betrayal alone. Sometimes they fracture from control, silence, and survival. And the most dangerous secrets? They aren't hidden. They're normalized. So the question isn't whether everything has been said yet. The question is, what hasn't been allowed to be said? Because when someone tells you they're done talking, it often means they're finally ready to start telling the truth. And Riley's truth didn't come with anger. It came with restraint. With precision. with the calm of someone who has nothing left to protect. That's what makes it unsettling. If you're still watching, you're not here for drama. You're here for the part that doesn't make the headlines. The part that lives in behavior, not statements. In movement, not comments. And what happens next in this story won't be announced. It will be noticed. In who disappears. In who advances. In what quietly survives. And what doesn't. So pay attention. Not to what's being said, but to what's being avoided. Because closure doesn't always look like justice. Sometimes it looks like silence that refuses to break. And if Riley decides to speak again, it won't be to clarify. It will be to confirm. So stay with the story. Watch the patterns. Track the absences. And remember, the loudest endings don't always come with noise. They come with disappearance. If you believe the truth should never be edited. If you believe silence doesn't mean innocence. And if you believe stories like this don't vanish. They just wait. Then subscribe. Because when the next line is crossed, you won't hear it. You'll feel it.